Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Thank you for being with me on another video, especially when we're going to focus on our journey in Linux. And it's interesting, guys, because I say this in every single video, and I say it for good reason, of course. If you're finding me for the first time, go ahead and make sure that you check out the description. And in the description, I put a link to the playlist because you always want to start from the first video and work your way up. Again, we build on concepts and ideas, and I don't want you guys to get lost. And it's very easy to get lost when you don't know what I'm talking about with previous topics covered before. But if you have been following my channel, great, welcome back. I appreciate you guys coming back for another one. And by the way, this video is going to be very interesting because we're going to learn about mounting and unmounting file systems. So it builds on the concepts that we've learned in the previous video. Now, before we jump into things, quick little housekeeping. If you like the content that I'm putting out and it's helping you out a lot, make sure you give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified when I upload new videos to the channel. And lastly, of course, share this with a family member or friend who's interested in learning about tech. You never know, maybe you can be helping them. Oh, and one last thing before I forget. If you guys have any questions for me, you can always put it in the comments, of course. But if you want to interact with me a little bit more and maybe you want to have conversations around tech, or maybe you want to troubleshoot anything, there's always links to my calendar. Go ahead and check that out. You can book time on my calendar, be able to talk to me, and have those further conversations if necessary. All right, guys, with all those items out of the way, let's jump into today's topic. And of course, today's topic is mounting and unmounting file systems. So when we think about mounting and unmounting file systems, a lot of that happens in the background when the computer is first starting up. So if we think about removable medias, it can be hard drives. So maybe you have a spinning hard drive, maybe you have an SSD hard drive, or possibly you may even have a USB. And interestingly enough, typically hard drives are inside of the computer. And because they are inside of the computer, they don't get removed often. Now you have some external hard drives, which is another different case, but majority of the times hard drives are inside of the computer and they typically don't get removed. Now, when the computer boots up for the first time and you are booting into Linux, there is automatic mounting that happens in the background to make sure that you're able to access the contents inside of that hard drive. But then the question now is if you have this USB and it's not plugged into the computer when the computer starts, what happens when you plug it in after the fact? How do you see the contents in there? And so this is going to be a special topic where you're going to learn about how to mount and unmount those file systems. And of course, this will also apply to hard drives, SSDs, but you see this a lot on removable media such as USBs. So from our last video, of course, we used the command called lsblk. And if we take a look here, you're starting to see that we have two items that are mounted, right? So we have our primary hard drive, SDA, and of course, it's partitioned into SDA1 and SDA2. Then the other thing that we have here is we have a removable media, and it's our CD-ROM drive, and that is SR0. And of course, that is mounted in this mount point over here. So /run/media/Elacosta/VBox. Okay, great. So now the question is, well, what if I want to take a look at the contents inside of this hard drive? How do I go ahead and take a look at this? And the interesting thing, before I show you guys how to do this, I want to show you one last thing when it comes to using the lsblk command or lsblock command. And the reason why I want to show you this is going to be very important because we're going to touch on a topic called UUID. In fact, actually, let's take a look at the man page for lsblk or lsblock. And if we go under the options section here, there's two options that I want to leverage. And one option is the -F. And the -F says output info about the file systems. It says this option is equivalent to the -O, which gives you the name, FS type, label, UUID, and mount point. And that's exactly what I'm interested in. I'm actually interested in the UUID. And we'll talk about that in just a second of what that is. Now, the other option that I want to use is the -P command, and that is the paths. And it tells us here to print the full device path. So let's go ahead and exit out of here, and let's do the lsblock command. and we're going to pass in the dash F and P options so that way we can see what we get. And look at that. This actually looks a little bit interesting, and more information is given than what we saw before when we just ran ls block. So if I take a look now and see that we have, by the way, you're also seeing that this SDA now is /dev/SDA. And of course, it's giving you the full path. So remember, if you are reading the man pages and you're reading the man pages for the file hierarchy, it'll tell you that the /dev or /devices, that's really what the directory is for, that is where your devices go. And by the way, one of the hard drives, which is SDA, it lives under there. So that's why you're having the full path of /dev/SDA. And then, of course, your /dev/devices, in a sense, /SR0, that is our CD-ROM drive that, of course, is being leveraged by VirtualBox, and it has our guest editions, and that's what you're seeing here. But now the other thing that I want to talk to you guys about is this special column here called UUID. Now the question is, what does that even mean? When it comes to these devices, especially when we're talking about hard drives, when we're talking about, flash drives, maybe you have an SD card, whatever that removable device is, these names that you're seeing here on the left-hand columns, they're not guaranteed to stay the same. That actually can change from time to time. So the problem you start having is that if these are never constant, and let's say, for example, you want to automatically mount upon startup the specific device, maybe it's a hard drive, maybe it's a USB flash drive, whatever that looks like, you're going to have a real big problem when it comes to using the name of the device because these names can change. And so this is where the UUID comes into effect. These are universally unique ID, hence UUID, and that actually stays the same for every single device. They never change. And so what that allows you to do is it allows you to go ahead and mount your particular removable media upon startup without any troubles or without worrying about whether the name changes or not. Imagine if I were to plug in this USB drive and I leave it on all the time, and then in my settings, and we'll talk about at a later time which setting that we adjust, but let's say in my settings, I call out that I want /dev/SDA to be mounted to a particular directory upon startup, and I'm hoping that it's this USB, but it turns out to be maybe a hard drive gets named SDA because it changes at any given time. And when I say any given time, I'm talking about startup, right? Once you reboot the computer, the name can change. And then imagine it's no longer my USB and it turns into that hard drive. That's not good, right? We need to have a way in order to make sure that it's consistent every single time. And again, that is what the UUID is for. You can leverage that in order to mount to a specific mount point, whatever that removable media is, and you don't have to worry that the name or the UUID changes upon restart. All right, so enough technical jargon there. Hopefully you guys get that and understand it. Let's go ahead and start mounting things so that way we can see what is inside of these particular removable media. And the one example that I'm going to give you guys is I'm going to take this flash drive that we've been talking about this whole entire time now. I'm going to plug it into my computer, or essentially this virtual machine, and we're going to go ahead and view the contents. And the only way to do that is by mounting it, of course. All right, guys, so now with my USB, and again, we talked about this earlier, my USB is plugged into my actual computer now, meaning my physical computer, but now we have to introduce it into the virtual machine, right? So it's essentially like we're plugging in the USB in the virtual machine. And in order to do that, we have to go into the settings for VirtualBox, and I'm going to go under devices, then I'm going to go under USB, and my flash drive is this PNY Technologies USB 2.0. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it's essentially as if I am going and plugging in that flash drive now into my virtual machine. And you're seeing actually it says new volume. So let's run the same command as we had before. So the ls block -fp, and let's see what we get this time. And look what actually changed. Not only do we have an SDA like we had before, and we had the SRO, but now we have SDB, And if we actually take a look at what this is, you can see here that the file system type is vfat, and here is the label, right? So it's called new volume, and you are seeing the UUID. And looks like it's automatically mounted in /run/media/El Acosta new volume. So now at this point, let's actually take a look at what's inside of that directory for that flash drive. So quick copy and paste, and I've shown you guys in the past how to do that real quickly. So let's go ahead and take a look with an LS to see what's inside of this flash drive. And of course, if you guys are wondering why this isn't working, because it looks like we have a cannot access, no such file or directory exists. I forgot to also mention too that whenever there's a space, there's actually something special you have to do. And the space that I'm referring to is, you see where it says new volume, there's a space right in the middle. We have to account for that. So let's go ahead and show you guys how to take care of that. So if I were to do a cd/run media El Acosta, and we do a new volume, look at the difference there, guys. This is actually something that a lot of people miss. In order to make sure that you account for that space, and I forgot to mention this before, you have to put this backslash here. I don't know if you see that. So that backslash means space. And if you don't have that, you're going to get this error message that I have over here. So just a little FYI, and I'm glad that that actually happened because it was a good teachable moment. So let's go into the directory now. Now we're in there. Let's take a look at what's inside. And look at that. We have some stuff in there. And it looks like we have a README. So let's go ahead and cat that README to our terminal and see what we get. It tells us there, so subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. So subscribe to the channel, guys. Why haven't you done that already? Matter of fact, we could open it in VI and you can see the same thing again. Now, if you're wondering, why is it that we don't have all of this in one line and then this is in a separate line? And it looks like the way it was saved was it didn't capture that new line. So in order to fix that, guys, we can show you real quickly here. This brings me back to programming days, I guess. We can open up VI, we can adjust the file, and we can include a new line in there. So that way you can have the subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. on one separate line, and then followed by your prompt in the terminal on the next line. So let's open up VI and let's do our README. So we insert a new line, write and quit. Now let's go ahead and cat the file again and see what we get. There you go. It says subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. You see that new line break in there that I have, followed by your prompt from your terminal. So very interesting on how you can add new lines and do all kinds of stuff that you're normally not used to seeing. Pretty cool there. And in fact, actually, you can adjust it even more. So if I wanted to do another adjustment and get rid of the second line, and let's try that again. There we go. So we actually fixed it and had the real intentions, which is, hey, subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. And you had a new line at the end of that line, meaning I want you to put the prompt right into the next part of the terminal, so it doesn't look all stuck together like it did before. All right, so anyways, guys, we took care of that. That was really cool. We got to see what was inside of that flash drive because we mounted the file system. But you may be asking, well, we didn't do anything to mount the file system. And you're absolutely correct. When you are running RHEL in a GUI, what tends to happen is when you plug in that flash drive is it automatically mounts those removable media for you. So what is the purpose then of learning mount and unmount if that happens automatically? And the reason for it is because you're going to have some servers that you're going to log into at some point in your career, and they don't have a GUI. And when you don't have a GUI, these removable media are not automatically mounted for you. So you have to understand how to do this. Now, in order to showcase this example now, we're going to cut off the GUI, meaning we're going to disable it. We're going to reboot the machine, and we're going to show you after plugging in the flash drive that it doesn't automatically mount. And so how are you able to take care of that and still read the file? I'm going to show you guys that right now. All right, guys. So now in order to disable the GUI and bring up the CLI on the next reboot, we're going to do a sudo systemctl set default, and we're going to do multi-user.target. So again, read the command here real quickly. Sudo system control set default multi-user target. So this is the command that we're going to run in order to reboot and bring up the CLI only. All right, so now with that done, let's go ahead and reboot the machine and see what we get. All right, so as you see here, we're presented with the login screen and our password. All right, great. So now we are actually in the machine. We were able to log in, and as you're seeing here, I don't have a GUI, which is interesting. So let's run our command and let's do an lsblk. And you can see here that we have SDA, which is our hard drive, SDB, which is our flash drive, and SR0, which is going to be our CD-ROM drive. Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's run the same command now, except we're going to have additional information using the -fp options and see what we get. Now, an interesting thing happened. If you're seeing here, SDB, like we looked at before, it was automatically mounted, right? So that is the difference between having a GUI and not having a GUI. The problem that we're running is how do we see that README file that I had in the flash drive when I can't see it now? We don't have a mount point. You're seeing that in the right column there where it shows you the mount point. There is nothing. I don't know where to see it. And the same thing actually is happening for our CD-ROM drive where we had the guest editions before. So we can't even see the contents of that either. And this is what I was talking to you about before. When you don't have a GUI, it is important to know this. So let's go ahead and make sure that we mount our flash drive so we can see what's inside of it. So the interesting thing is we're going to go ahead and mount it in the /mnt directory. And if we take a look inside of here, this is the directory specifically meant for temporary mount points. And you learn that by looking at the hierarchy man page. So here, what we can do is we can do a make dir and we can say flash drive. And of course, I don't have permissions to do that here, so we need to elevate sudo make dir flash drive, and there we go. We have our flash drive directory there. Now, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but a mount point, all it is a directory in the file system. So essentially, you are going to mount the flash drive to a directory, and the directory we have here is called flash drive. So let's go ahead and use a command in order to mount this. And by the way, the command to mount in order to mount is mount, which is easy, right? So if we were to do a man mount, you can see here all the information that you need in order to mount, but I'll let you guys read that on your own time. So let's go ahead and do a mount. And by the way, in order to mount, you're going to either need the name or the UUID. And what we talked about before is the name can change. So let's take a look at the name real quick, lsblk-fp. And we see here that the name that we are interested in is SDB2. And the reason why we're interested in that is because that one has the label of new volume. So let's go ahead and use that. And I'm going to show you how to use either the name or the UUID. And we'll start off with the name first. So let's do mount. And it's going to be /dev/SDB2 and space. And where do we want to mount it to? We're going to mount it to /mnt/flash drive. There we go. And of course, we're going to have to put a sudo in front of it because we have to elevate our privileges. So let's go ahead and mount the flash drive to our mount point, which is going to be /mnt/flash drive. So just like that, we've mounted it. So let's take a look at the contents inside of our directory, which is the flash drive directory. So if I were to go ahead and cd inside of flash drive, and we take a look at what's inside, you can now see the README file that you could not see before. And if we were to go ahead and cat the README file, subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. Where else are you going to learn all this Linux stuff? I mean, this is pretty cool. Go ahead and subscribe. Let's talk about this quickly. If we have the name that we use in order to mount, why did we use the name instead of the UUID? Well, in this case, it's a quick example where I said, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and just use the name. I'm not really interested in having this as a long-term solution, meaning if the computer reboots, I don't really care because I'm just showing you this as an example. But if I wanted a more permanent solution where I'm saying, hey, you know what? I want to mount this particular drive every single time the computer reboots, then it is very important to have the UUID instead of the actual name that I used. So How do we mount the UUID? I'm going to show you that now. But before I do, let's go ahead and unmount so you can see what that command looks like. So let's go ahead and use umount. And by the way, umount is for unmount. And we're going to do /mnt /flash drive. And let's put a sudo in front of it. And by the way, guys, before I run this command, I can tell you off the bat that we're going to get an error. So I'm doing this on purpose. And here is the error. If you guys ever see this before, and I remember when I first saw this, I said, what the heck does this even mean? But it tells you umount, it says target is busy. And the reason why you can't unmount it is because guess what? What directory am I in? PWD, print working directory. I'm in the flash drive directory, which is the same directory that I'm looking to unmount. It's not going to work. You got to get out of it in order to be able to unmount it. So quick little tidbit there in case you guys ever run into that problem. So let's go ahead and go up a directory. Now that we're no longer in it, we can go ahead and unmount. And now we did. So if I were to go ahead and take a look, there's the mount point, which is flash drive. So let's go back inside of it. And let's do an ls. And what do you know? Nothing is there because we unmounted the flash drive. So really cool there. So let's go up another directory. And now I'm going to show you real quickly how you can leverage the UUID, which is the unique universal identifier name, in order to mount the flash drive. So that way, in a later video, I'm going to show you how to put it into another file. And that file will allow you to permanently mount this particular flash drive every single time the computer reboots, and it mounts it to the same mount point, which is something that is very, very handy for a more permanent solution. So let's go ahead and use sudo mount. And this is where we're going to do UUID equals, and then we're going to do double quotes. And then this is where you use the UUID in order to be able to mount the flash drive to a mount point. And if you see here, remember, we want to use the label new volume. So let's go ahead and use the UUID there. So that's going to be DC35-9D7B. And let's go ahead and close it with a double quote. Now, at this point, all we have to do is give it the mount point. So what was our mount point again? It was /mnt/flash drive. Let's go ahead and hit enter here and see what we get. All right, great. Looks like that seemed to work. So let's go ahead and take a look. If I were to do an ls, here is the 3 directories that I had before. So let's go into the flash drive, which is the one that I was concerned with. So let's go to CD, flash drive, and let's take a look inside and see what we get. And there you go. All the contents inside of the flash drive is now accessible to you. So if I were to do a cat readme, you can see here it says, of course, subscribe to Acosta E.T.F. How awesome is that? And by the way, for a third time, is it third or fourth? I don't know. Subscribe to the channel. Where else are you going to get this awesome training for free? So anyways, let's go ahead now and go up another directory. And this is where we can go ahead and unmount our /mnt flash drive. Let's do a sudo in front of that to elevate our privileges. And there you go. It is automatically unmounted at this point. So if I were to do an lsblk-fp, you can see here, especially on our SDB2, there is no mount point because I just unmounted it. And by the way, I'm going to mount it one more time so you guys can see the difference, meaning it shows you the mount point. So let's go ahead and mount it real quick so that way you can see the output of lsblk with the -fp option. So let's run our lsblk, and there you go. You're seeing there that if you look at /dev/sdb2, you have that UUID, which is what I used in order to mount. And by the way, on the right hand side, it actually shows you the mount point, which is the directory in which you can find the content. So last but not least, let's unmount one more time, and let's take a look at the outputs, and you can see that it's no longer there. Pretty cool, guys. Now, the last thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to go ahead and enable the GUI again. We will reboot, and you will see that the computer will automatically mount the flash drive just because we have our GUI running. That is very, very important to understand that. So let's go ahead and do a sudo systemctl set default, and we can put graphical.target, and let's go ahead and reboot. Now you guys seen I haven't done anything in my terminal just yet. Let's go ahead and do an lsblk-fp. And what do you know? It is automatically mounting our flash drive, which is our SDB2 here. And this is the mount point in which it's automatically mounting it to. So just because we're running the GUI now, it automatically mounts that for us. So it's as easy as just taking a look inside of our run media, Alacosta, and we do new volume. And you can see all the items in there already because it automatically mounted it for us just because we are running a GUI. So we can actually now take a look inside, right? Once again. So let's copy and paste this here. Let's take a look at our README. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Now, one last thing that I want to leave you guys with, and this is actually very, very important, especially when you're working with mounting and unmounting. If we go back to our cd/mount directory, that's where we were mounting stuff. And remember, we had a flash drive directory that we made. We have a CD and we have a storage. Now, the CD and the storage were directories that I made in the past, and I mounted stuff to it. Now, what if we have a mount point that's already taken up, meaning that if there's a directory and there's stuff inside of that directory and we're trying to mount that directory, essentially the contents inside of that directory become hidden. So as an example, let's say we are in our home directory and let's say we are going into the Hello World C directory. And as you can see here, I have 3 files in here already. And by the way, guys, mount points don't have to specifically go in the /mmt directory. It can be anywhere. It's just that that directory is conveniently made for that. But if I wanted to, I can use this Hello World C directory that I'm in right now and mount my flash drive to it. But what starts to happen is that if you do that, it will hide the files that are in there and it will only show you what you want, which is the flash drive, right? And then once you unmount it, then these files come back. In fact, actually, let me see if I can do that for you real quickly so that way you can see what's happening. So if I were to do an lsblk-fp, let's go ahead and unmount, and we're going to do our mount point. Let's do an lsblk again. All right, looks like our flash drive is no longer there, meaning it's no longer mounted. So we can go ahead and take a look at one more time. There is our hello files. So now let's go ahead and do a mount. And let's go ahead and target our /dev/sdb2. And that is, of course, our flash drive. Remember, our flash drive. And let's go ahead and put this in our home/hello world C. And let's run this and see what we get. Let's run our lsblk-fp command. And you can see here, it is no longer mounted to the /run media like you were seeing before. Now it's mounted to the /home/Alacosta/hello world C. So now with our flash drive now mounted back into that hello world C directory like we talked about before. Remember, you guys saw the output before. It had 3 files in there, 3 C files. Now, if I were to do a pwd, which shows you the working directory that I'm in, it is /home/Alacosta. So let's cd back into our hello world C now. Let's do an ls. And what do you know? My files that were there before are no longer there, right? All my hello world C files that were there before, they no longer exist. Now I have this README from my flash drive. And this is a great point where if you're trying to mount a removable media to a directory that already has stuff inside of it, it hides all those things and it just shows you what you're mounting. So let's do an lsblk real quick, -fp, and let's go ahead and unmount that. And when I say unmount that, I'm talking about the flash drive. So let's get out of our flash drive and let's do a umount, put a sudo in front of that. And let's go ahead and give it the mount point. Alrighty, looks like that is done. So if I were to do an lsblk-fp, you can see that that mount point is no longer there. And now we can take a look at the directory now, which was our cd hello world C. Again, pwd shows us where we are. So that's home, Elacosta, hello world C. Let's do an ls now. And what do you know? Where is that readme? Well, it's no longer there because we unmounted it. We now have our files that we had before, which is just the hello world C files that I need in order to build this C program. So really cool how that all works. So anyways, guys, that'll do it for this video. I hope that you guys learned a lot. I hope this information is very, very valuable when you're looking at your journey in Linux. And as always, guys, if you love the content that I'm producing and it helps you out a lot, make sure you go ahead and give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so you're notified when I upload the next video to the channel. And of course, share this with a family member or a friend. So anyways, guys, I'm going to get going. Keep practicing. Remember, practice makes perfect. But in the meantime, if you don't want to wait for my next video to drop, YouTube thinks that you'll like this video popping up on screen. So go ahead and give that a watch. And I'll see everybody in the next one.